I don't want to carp on endlessly about theism, religion, atheism and so forth, but I did want to say this because I wanted to point out that my approach to yoga is rather peculiar for a Christian. I mean, some people might say it's rather peculiar for a Christian even to be into yoga. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Sharada, my wife, is Vedantist in her approach to yoga. In other words, she believes that the Vedas are revealed knowledge from Ishvara, God, and I think I would definitely cleave more to Samkhya. And I should probably explain what Samkhya is. There are two sets of schools of Indian thought. One of them is the astika, and the other is the nastika. In other words, astika is the belief that, it includes the belief that that the Vedas are revealed knowledge. Nastika is that they are not. As far as Samkhya is concerned, Samkhya is in fact essentially atheistic, but what's happened is someone seems to have come along and unceremoniously plonked a load of theism on top of it. This is very similar to the situation with Ecclesiastes, which has been described as a collection of existentialist essays that was included in the Bible by mistake, where it is fairly clear, if you read it, that somebody has come along and plonked a load of theism on top of that, which is entirely out of keeping with the general tone of the book. Now, you could look at Samkhya as one of several versions of Hindu atheism, but I prefer to think of it as South Asian thought that is atheistic. And as far as Western atheism is concerned, what you would actually be saying if you said that that was Christian atheism would be the same as saying that it's an atheist school of Hindu thought. In a sense, Western atheism is Christian atheism, but in another sense, that doesn't sound like it makes a lot of sense, and it would probably annoy a lot of atheists to say that. One of the interesting things about Samkhya is that it is atheistic, and the reasons it's atheistic are sometimes quite familiar to us as Westerners, and sometimes very different. And so I wanted really to talk about that, and I'm already 2 minutes into the video, so sorry about that. The arguments. Firstly, there are some familiar arguments. For example, Samkhya argues that there is no God because God can't be observed, and because there is no logical argument for the existence of God. So in other words, it rejects the first cause argument, it also rejects the ontological argument, and also rejects the design argument. And I do all three of those as well. So that's something that I feel very comfortable with. However, it then goes off and does rather peculiar things to a Western mind. One of them is that it says, well, karma is the law of the universe, and since karma is the law of the universe, the notion of God being out there rewarding and punishing people is completely superfluous, because the basic workings of the universe are such that humans are rewarded or punished, or rather the consequences of their actions are visited upon them for all beings. The consequences of their actions are visited upon them. So God is a superfluous concept there and can be taken out of the picture. So that's a bit peculiar. Then it says, well, if karma doesn't exist, then you have a situation where there is a God, and this is like the Epicurus' nostrum, I think it's called, where the notion of God is rejected because God has not created a world free of suffering, and surely if God is good, then God would create a world that's free of suffering. So it also rejects God for that reason, which is another familiar reason to us. However, it then also, once again, flips back into a very South Asian way of looking at things, or perhaps Buddhist sort of way of looking at things, where it says that, well, if God is active, if God acts in the world by doing things like causing floods, sending his son to be crucified, and all that kind of thing, although that's not what they had in mind, obviously, because they're South Asian, then that kind of God is subject to desire. And if a God is subject to desire, then that God is not omnipotent and not all-powerful, because God is forced into doing particular things by his desire to do those things. So you can't have that kind of God. And so that's what Samkhya's view of atheism basically is. It says that there cannot be a God for the following reasons. Now, I feel very comfortable with that because, although I am a theist, I think that the arguments generally used for the existence of God are very flawed and nothing to do with the reason why I believe in God. And also, I think that because yoga is a technology, a technique, It isn't going to be helpful, for example, in medicine, to posit the existence of God who heals people miraculously or something like that, because that's not going to get you anywhere in dealing with people in terms of technology. It isn't going to say, you can bring this medicine along and it'll do this, you can do this surgical procedure and so forth and sort this out, and so forth. So actually, removing God from the picture entirely, which is how science basically works, is a very accurate thing to do. So I think for all intents and purposes, as far as yoga is concerned, I am definitely atheist, and I definitely feel quite attracted to Samkhya. But you have to notice also that that atheistic philosophy of Samkhya is very unlike Western atheism on the whole. And there are a load of atheisms out there. There are actually at least two other schools of atheism in South Asian philosophy, which are very, very different from atheism as it's understood in the West. And I think we have to understand that atheism is nothing more than the opinion that God does not exist. And all sorts of things can imply atheism. Atheism implies rather less than it is implied by. So if you like this video, please rate, comment, share and subscribe. If you dislike it, please tell me why so I can improve, and I'll see you tomorrow.